Okay, whatever. We're going with it. We're going to start with Lister. So let's write Joseph Lister.
It's working now.
I know, but I'm worried about what happens when I pause it later for the video. I'll figure it out. But I don't know. Whatever. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm not really sure. Okay, so Joseph Lister. Joseph he's going to be the father of antiseptic surgery. What does antiseptic mean? Hello? Antiseptic surgery. What does antiseptic mean? Not what? Okay. Not infecting. Okay, so clean. All right, think clean here. Okay, so you're not going to catch diseases, basically. Okay, so Lister is going to take place in the mid 1860s in Scotland. We always have to do our where and our when. Okay. So he noticed that there was this large percentage of people who either got really bad diseases or who died after they were in surgery. Okay, so think back 1860s. It's not the normal Grey's Anatomy scene that you're used to watching. I love Grey's, but it's not clean. Think about hospitals, doctors that you've ever been to, always really clean, right? Like doctors are in gowns or in scrubs. They wash their hands all the time, or they have Germ-X, right? Or they're wearing gloves or whatever it is. Like very clean, right? Not the case in the 1860s. And so until this time, until Lister made the connection kind of between cleanliness and like people surviving, like they didn't really think about it. Okay. So he thought that, or he noticed that there was like this, it said it in the video that ward fever was a big thing after surgeries. So that's kind of like what started this all. So he noticed that ward fever was common after surgery. He also thought that if you wash your hands, that maybe that could cut down that ward fever between patients. So he kind of starts putting two and two together, and he starts telling the other people in the medical community, right? Like other doctors. He like writes about it, but nobody's really believing him. They think that he's kind of crazy. Like they've just been doing what they've been doing for a long time, and nobody, I guess, is really kind of concerned about the high number of deaths or disease that happens after surgery. But Lister really thinks that it is a problem, and so he thinks that there's a connection with the cleanliness. Okay, so he starts using carbolic acid. That's what they talked about in the video. But he uses carbolic acid to clean, or to sterilize. That's probably a better word, sterilize. Hospitals, hospitals and surgeries and instruments. Okay. So he starts to do it despite everyone else not believing him. And because of that, he sees a reduced number of infections and improved recovery. And overall, it's a decreased, I cannot spell today. decreased post-operation death number. Okay, so my Grays people, you know what post-op means, post-operation, after surgery. Okay, so after surgery, that number of deaths goes down. Okay. So what does he do? He proved it. Have you ever told your friends, like, oh, prove it? Well, he did it. Okay, so he proved it over looking at the stats. Okay, so he is the one who really made that connection. He found the link between the cleanliness of hospitals and deaths after surgery. Okay, that's our big idea here. He found that connection. Okay, so the cleaner it was, the more successful, like the surgery was, like it was going to be cleaner, so people were going to heal faster and lower that risk of disease happening or infection happening after the surgery. Okay, what do you think was named after him? Listerine. Yep. Oh yeah, funny how that works, right? Yep. Listerine. Is that how I do it? Sure. Yeah, it picked right back up. Okay, thanks. All right, Jon Snow. He's our second guy. And this is going to take place in London in 1854. He is going to be the father of medical geography. Okay. So, anyone know what cholera is? Yeah, it's a disease, but do you know like what happens? It's kind of gross. Huh? It was because the water was dirty, but they didn't know that yet. What?
It was from the sewage system. Right?
Yeah, it was from the sewage system. But what cholera does is that it causes, cholera caused, I guess you could say, cholera caused an infection in the small intestine. And it led to diarrhea, really bad dehydration, and it could lead to death. Okay, so that, I can't ever spell diarrhea. It's gross. Diarrhea, I think. Dehydration. And death if it was really bad. Okay, so there's this outbreak of cholera. So all these people are getting really sick. But the people thought that it was happening because of bad air. There's a term for it, I can't remember, but back then they just thought it was that there was bad air, and if you were one of the unlucky ones and you were the one who got sick, it was because of bad air. Like nobody knew that it was because of the water. Because that was the problem. But this guy, Jon Snow, was the one who kind of figured it out first, and he didn't really believe this whole bad air thing that everybody was kind of pushing. He thought that there was like an actual reason for it. And so he kind of took that map, like he started mapping where the people were who were getting sick, right? So he took a map, like in that video, he took a map and he started plotting where people were in the city who were sick. And so he found that it was close to this Broad Street pump because remember, think back 1800s, they don't have running water in their houses, so they have to go to a pump to physically get their water and then take it back to their house, okay? So one pump is going to set like a whole neighborhood or whatever for their water, okay? So he starts mapping where all these people are who are getting sick and who are getting cholera. And he notices that it's pretty much close together right there next to this Broad Street pump. So he kind of takes his findings and goes to the government officials, and they're like, no, like that's not true. We don't believe you. It's just because of the bad air. And he's like, no, but I have proof. Like, here it is. Like, I've plotted it. And they kind of come back at him and say, well, there are these few like outliers, like they're not all right next to the Broad Street pump. Like there's some people who are on the other side of town who got it too, so you can't be right. So Jon Snow kind of goes back and he like expands his research, I guess you could say. And so he goes and finds those like couple of houses that were also affected by cholera. So when he goes to like kind of interview them, he asked those people where they got their water. And these were like richer people, like richer parts of town or whatever. And one couple in particular said that they got their water delivered to them because they're rich. Okay, so people go and deliver their water to them. And they got it from the Broad Street pump because they thought that tasted better. So there was a direct correlation there with the water pump. So he again goes back to the government officials, tries to tell them his case, his story, and again they don't believe him. So this time he like is super convinced that this is the reason for the sickness. So he breaks the handle off of the pump so that way nobody can get the water out of that pump, and the cholera outbreaks kind of start decreasing. So nobody else gets cholera because they have to go get their water from other pumps, which are cleaner. It's cleaner, right? It's not infected. So that pump had gotten infected because the sewage had like run into that water supply, and that's how they got sick. Like I think they said that people were like throwing dirty diapers into whatever water system that had affected the Broad Street pump, and that's how people got sick. Okay, so that's kind of the story. That's how it kind of all happened. So it was a long story, but we are going to cut that down and write a shortened version of that. Okay, so he ended up mapping the distribution of deaths and he found that the Broad Street pump was the source of infection. So again, people thought that like Lister, nobody believed him. Like the government officials, nobody believed that it was actually the water, right? They thought it was bad air. So instead, he proved them wrong, right? He proved that the transmission of the disease came from swallowing. Hey, can someone let him in? Oh, it is? Oh. Okay, hold on. Oh, is that right? Yeah, okay. So the transmission of disease was from the contaminated water. Not from the bad air. So the big idea here, what is medical geography? What do you think that is? Whoa, what? That was forceful.
Conditions based on the location of where things are happening.
Yes, where things are happening, right? So the geography of it, okay? So we figured out from him that maps can help us understand the spread of diseases. Okay, so that's our big takeaway from him, is that he kind of was the first one to start plotting where things were happening, or why things were happening where they were, right? We talk about the why of the where a lot. This is truly like a perfect example of him looking at something and trying to figure out why things were happening where they were, and he found the connection to that Broad Street pump. Okay, so perfect example of the why of the where here. Okay, makes sense? All right, Jon Snow. Let's look at the last one, Edward Jenner. Okay, so that's pretty good explanation there of Edward Jenner. So we are going to kind of summarize that. What was he the father of? Do you remember? Immunology. Immunology. Okay. With him, we aren't 100% sure like what the specific dates were, but it was, okay, where's that? Where's my pen? Well, early 1800s. You can go ahead and write that down. I don't know where my pen is. What? Oh, my pen died. That's the problem. Shoot. How am I going to do this? Okay, so early 1800s, countryside of England. Write that down. Shoot. Countryside of England. He is going to be a country doctor. Okay, so he was just out, he wasn't in the big city, he wasn't in London, he was just a country doctor who kind of roamed from house to house. So that's another thing that we can write down. So he was the first doctor to vaccinate against smallpox. Smallpox kind of made these spots on your, like, really all over your body, so kind of think chicken pox, but it was smallpox. And it was this bad pus stuff. It kind of sounds gross, but it could lead to like really bad blindness or death in like extreme cases. Okay, so you can write that down, but you don't have to. But these sores that were on like their arms, the girl said in the video that she would never have like scars on her face because of smallpox. It left really bad scars, and like these pock marks is what they called them, all over your body. So like just ugly looking scars. Okay. But we get the word vaccinate here because of what he did. So vacum in Latin is cow. What is vaca in Spanish? Cow, vaca, right? Is cow in Spanish. And so that's where that word vaccinate comes from, because he literally used the cows from like the cowpox as a vaccine. Okay, so that's where that word vaccine comes from, is from cow. Okay, so what was inoculation? Do you remember what that word inoculation was? What was it?
It was like where he like cut out like the stuff, like the pus or the grossness of one of the people who like had the disease and put it in another person.
Yeah, so think about it was the red, like, scratch marks from the video. Remember, there was, like, red and there was blue? The red ones was where he was taking the actual smallpox, like, disease, like the pus from the scars, the smallpox scars, which is really gross. But he was taking that and, like, cutting it or, like, inserting it, right, injecting it kind of into a new person. Because the idea was that if you, like, insert it, like, yourself kind of, is that, like, and you survive past that, then you won't ever get smallpox again. So he was, like, intentionally implanting it into someone else. Not he like, because Jenner wasn't inoculation, he was vaccination. But inoculation before that was taking it and putting it into someone else, okay? So it was like giving a mild dose of the disease for protection against it from, like, later on. So that was inoculation. Right, but then he noticed that the Dairy Maids didn't get it because why? Yeah, because they had the cowpox. So they never got smallpox because they had cowpox. So then he injected the cowpox pus into people. And they only had like a mild sickness, right? Like, what happened to the little boy?
Like a fever and 70.
Yeah, he, like, had a fever. He didn't really feel good, but it wasn't smallpox. Like, he didn't have an outbreak, okay? So it was only just a mild sickness. And then later on, he injected the actual smallpox into the little boy. And he was immune, right? It didn't affect him at all. And this is how vaccines happened. Remember, vaca, vacum is cow in Latin and in Spanish. Okay, but that's how vaccines happened. So this is why we vaccinate over inoculation, okay? All right, did you get it all? We need to come back to our circle in the middle and think about what a good title or a good group of words this could be to explain these three guys. What do we have? I'm not going to tell you. You need to come up with it. What's a good title for these guys? What could we call it? No right or wrong answer here.
The doctors.
Okay, but more specific.
Fathers of modern medicine.
Okay, that's a good one. What else? What else? Give me another one. One more. Wake up. Let's go.
Medical advances of the 1800s.
Ooh, I like that. Medical advancements of the 1800s. So take your pick. So, a few things to consider here at the end. So these doctors kind of proved they went beyond the whole bad air philosophy that most doctors kind of just described that it was just bad air. So they proved that bad air didn't cause diseases, that there were actual causes, and these guys went and found it, right? They proved it. So Lister in the hospitals found that link to cleanliness, right? The cholera outbreak, John Snow went and found that the water was the problem. Edward Jenner found out how to vaccinate against the smallpox, right? So all of these guys were made fun of, or they just weren't believed. So it took a lot of convincing, but also these guys weren't scared to go and try a new way, right? Like they proved it. They weren't scared of failing. They just went ahead and did it, and it came out with some really big advancements, right? So they all brought medical advancement. And why is that important to geography? Why would medical advancement be important for us in this class? What have we been talking about?
Like high model.
High model, okay. Keep going with it. Alex, what are you going to say?
Healthcare and infrastructure.
Yeah, healthcare for sure. So this directly is going to affect what? How is this going to affect people? All three of these things that these doctors came up with, what's it going to affect? Decreased death rate, but also longer life expectancy. Okay? Longer life expectancy. So this is the start. Okay? This is the start of growing healthcare, medical advancements, the importance of funding money into healthcare, and studies and research into how we can allow people to live longer. Right? And that all ties in with population migration, because now our people are living longer. And what we're going to look at when we come in, I think it's Wednesday, we'll do population pyramids. You guys should be reading about that, I think, this week in chapter 4. And so all of this kind of starts with these doctors and why it's important. Okay?